none other than Marshall Gripp Gillson coming up. Our first book of screenplays. I cannot tell you how amazing it is to put this out there. So a little intro for Marshall. Marshall Gripp Gillson is a writer, programmer, educator based primarily on the internet. Marshall graduated from Morehouse College in 2009 and the Georgia Institute of Technology in 2012. Their work is multimedia and interdisciplinary, ranging from written word to performance art to electronic installation. They've appeared on stage as an actor and a poet, self-published and been printed in literary magazines, built digital chatbooks and chatbots, taught college courses and workshops, and have written, produced, and appeared in short films. No big deal. Marshall's television pilot, Offbeat/But on Point, won the 2020 Table Read My Screenplay competition and was produced and broadcast as a table read. In 2019, Marshall co-wrote and produced the grant-funded stage play Spirit, which premiered to a 3-show run in October. Marshall was recognized by the 2019 Roxbury International Film Festival with the K-Born Emerging Filmmaker Award about their short film Shayla premiered at the festival. Marshall debuted the role of Nathaniel Green in AS220's 2017 production of A Furtive Movement, The Use of Farce. Marshall is also a nationally acclaimed spoken word performer and appeared on the National Poetry Slam final stage twice in adjacent years. Much of Marshall's work is fantastical, surreal, and absurdist. It confronts race, gender, mental imbalance, loneliness, existential dread, and sometimes robots. In their spare time, they enjoy board games, avoiding attention, and writing biographies in the third person. Please give a warm introduction to Gripp.
Hi, I'm Gripp. I'm one of Game Over Book's 2021 authors. This is my book, The Fainting Game and Other Stories. It's a collection of closet screenplays. What that means is these are the scripts for short films, but they're not intended to be produced per se. They are intended to be read on the page. So they kind of read more like short stories. I'm going to read you actually the second script from the book. The first script is like a 1-page short that is annotated with the different parts of a screenplay for readers who may not be familiar. But yeah, I'm gonna read one of the stories from the book and then come back and do some other stuff. So the story is called Hand Style. Interior studio, Andre's apartment, day. The sun cuts through the slats of the window blinds. Andre tosses in bed. He shuffles his arms in front of his eyes, but the light hits them anyway. He rolls onto his back and sighs, turns lazily toward the clock. 8:47 a.m. His shoulders slump. Rushing water from the shower. There are clothes on the floor, there are papers on the surfaces, there are plates all around, but the apartment is drained of color, dull and lifeless, unhappy. A pale red tie is draped over the back of a chair. The desk is covered with black and white drawings of animals scattered atop one another. In the shower, Andre rubs soap under his arms. He dresses in front of a mirror, apathy on his face as he buttons up his shirt. He reaches back to grab his tie from the chair. He wraps it partway around his neck, then pauses to consider. He inhales slowly as his eyes drift closed. The tie comes alive, dancing like a charmed snake. It crosses itself, folding over into a perfectly balanced knot, then pulls itself tight. Suddenly, not so dull. Interior, office, day. The office is also lifeless. Rows and rows of sterile gray cubicles line the floor and the tapping of typing fills the room. Andre sits at a desk in the cubicle, empty but for his gray computer, typing too. A white guy chortles. Andre pokes his head up over the cubicle wall to see the conversation. Lock them all up, can't solve it faster than that. Andre puts his headphones on. He lifts his hands from the keyboard, leans back in his chair and closes his eyes. The keys keep typing themselves. Andre's eyes betray his mindlessness as he opens them again. He looks around. Outside the cubicle, no one to notice his dysfunction. A text message pops up on his computer screen. From Brent, you're late, winky smiley face, meeting in conference room euphoria. Andre, exasperated. He leans forward until his forehead lands with a thud on his desk. Exterior city street, day. A bike chained to a pole. Andre struggles into his messenger bag for his keys, retrieves them, drops them, picks them up, and opens the bike lock. He wraps the chain around the handlebars and locks it there with a practiced quickness. He climbs onto the bike and rides off down the street, wobbling as he gains his balance. Even the sunset, spectacular in the sky, looks dull and lifeless. Andre swivels the neighborhood, pooled in a warm, affectionate light he cannot appreciate. Interior studio, Andre's apartment, night. Andre rushes through the door, suddenly energetic. No light through the blinds now, night has fallen. Andre hurriedly strips his khakis and his button down, replaces them with black jeans and a hoodie, black sneakers, a beanie cap. He lifts a black backpack and swings it over his shoulders, the clink of metal cans from inside it. Fully transformed, Andre pauses for the first time. He admires himself in the full-length mirror. He turns to his desk to thumb through some of his drawings, birds, rats. Andre lifts one page to examine it more closely. A piercing, snarling tiger. Slight nod, then he turns to leave. Exterior, tunnel, night. The road under a bridge, dull, lit only by the street light from outside it. Andre huffs up the street, under the overpass, and stops to appreciate its big, empty walls. His fingertips run over the concrete. But there's work to be done, so he turns away, slings the backpack off, and rips it open. Inside are 3 cans of spray paint, one yellow, one magenta, and one light blue. Andre pulls them from his bag. The cans clink on the ground as he lines them carefully, one by one. He takes a step back to lord over the cans, nozzles pointed at the wall, standing at attention, an inches-tall fence. Andre inhales slowly, and exhales slowly. He lifts his hands and the cans obey his command, floating in time with his movements. They hover for a moment, awaiting instruction, before Andre casts his hands forward toward the wall. The cans dance to life, weaving, spraying the concrete, and Andre conducts them, pointing and directing, crafting. Some of the paint layers itself on the wall, other drops mix mid-air. A multicolored cloud of paint spray forms in front of Andre, conjuring. He drops his arms to the side. As the paint settles, a landscape emerges. An impossibly detailed thicket of jungle trees extends into the walls, suddenly not so dull. Andre steps forward. He beckons the cans and they comply, converging on the center of the wall. His gestures shrink, small, precise, practiced. The cans rattle, shaking back and forth over the remaining blank space. Andre's eyes narrow with focus. He steps back to admire his work. At the center of the wall is a portrait of a growling tiger. The whoop of a police siren over his shoulder. Andre spins his head to look for the car. He grabs his backpack, opens it, and snaps his fingers twice. The spray paint cans scurry back into the bag like excited puppies. Andre pauses to look at his work again, given now to the city. Then he dashes away. Exterior, tunnel, night, later. The tiger painting alone in the silent night. Its eyes are still but alert. Then it blinks. Its pupils move from side to side, scanning the road. Empty street to the right. Pupils shift. Empty street to the left. The tiger turns its head gingerly. Then, one by one, its body parts come alive. Its paw shakes. Its legs bend. Its tail swishes. The tiger paces back and forth, still flat as paint against the wall. Its first paw reaches out, cautious, and touches the road. The tiger climbs down from the wall and onto the street. Interior studio, Andre's apartment, day. Andre tosses in his bed. He rolls over to look at the clock, 8:51 a.m. The sound of rushing water as he showers, his apartment, dull and lifeless. A blue tie dances itself into a knot around his neck. Andre tightens it with his hands in his pockets. Its color outshines everything else in the room. Interior office, day. Andre suffers in his cubicle, headphones on, staring grimly at his monitor. His keyboard types without fingers. He flicks his eyes toward his mouse and the scroll wheel turns. News headlines slide up on his computer screen. 12 killed in hospital bombing. President denies blame for recent failures. Wild tiger spotted on the streets of Boston. Bits of conversation leak through his headphones. He pulls his headphones off one ear and pokes his head over the cubicle wall to see a guffawing white guy. Reverse racism! Andre sits back down and sighs. Interior studio, Andre's apartment, night. Andre bursts through the door of the apartment. He dons his furtive outfit, admires himself in the mirror. Cans clink in his backpack as he lifts it and heads out the door. Exterior, city street, night. A lifeless brick building looms in the distance, an empty wall leaning over a dimly lit parking lot. The moon is high in a cloudless sky. Andre arrives with his backpack and admires his new canvas. He reaches out to touch it. Perfect. Then opens his backpack. He leans down to line his spray paint cans between himself and the wall. He tosses his backpack to the side, then stands ready. Andre closes his eyes, inhales slowly, exhales slowly. He raises his hands and the cans spring to life again, floating in front of the wall. He swings his arms, conducting a new mural, a new cloud of paint, a haze of hues that fix themselves precisely to the brick. The cans buzz and rattle back and forth, and soon the wall shows a detailed forest mural. Andre steps forward, furrows his brow. The cans shudder and shake in time with his meticulous finger motion. He sighs and drops his hands. The cans clatter to the ground, and he leans in to examine. Pig, ornery and pink and slobbering and unapologetic. Then a police siren sounds. Fuck! Andre turns around, snaps his fingers twice. The paint can zip back into his bag. Too late. The voice of a cop. Hey, what are you doing? Wasting no time on negotiation, Andre dashes. The cop rushes to give chase. Boots thump on the gravel. Andre's backpack lays dejected on the ground. Exterior, alley, night. Andre sprints into the alley. After a few long strides, he stumbles to a stop. A tall chain link fence blocks his way and he spins back around. The cop huffs around the corner, trains his gun on Andre. Stand still! Andre instinctively raises his hands. Don't shoot. The cop inches forward. You are under arrest. Andre tries to run for the fence. The cop fires. 3 shots in quick succession. Andre falls to the ground. He lies still as the night. Realization on the cop's face. His gun clicks back into its holster. Shit. He rushes to Andre's body, face down on the ground, and crouches over it. He runs his hands over Andre's waistline along his back, but there's no weapon. The cop looks down at his own hands. They're dry. He looks at the body again. There are no wounds. Behind him, 3 bullets hang frozen in the air, glinting even in the dim light of the alley. The cop grabs Andre's shoulder and turns him over. Andre's eyes are wide open and watching. Andre throws a punch and it lands hard on the cop's cheek. The cop collapses to the ground unconscious. Andre stands, chest puffed, and brushes his clothes. He lifts his hand and the bullets come rushing toward his face, still floating. They hover in front of his eyes. He examines them with a smirk, then, with a flick of his wrist, casts them aside. 3 metallic clicks as they fall to the cement. Andre swaggers out of the alley, the cop still lying where he collapsed. Exterior, city street, night. Andre's backpack lays ejected on the ground. The sound of a pig snorting. The pig slobbers. Its face is buried in the contents of a knocked-over trash can. Paws tread on the street. The pig lifts its head to look around. An empty street. It goes back to eating. A striped tail slides behind a bush. The pig looks up again. Still nothing. It begins to lower its head again when the tiger pounces. The pig squeals. Blood splatters. The pig stops struggling, its body quiet and still. The tiger lifts its head and growls. Its lips curl back, its teeth bare in a smile almost human. And suddenly, the night is not so dull. Title card, hand style. Ta-da. The Fainting Game and Other Stories, available now from Game Over Books. You should get a copy. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, I'm going to do some other stuff. I'm a multimedia writer. I started doing these like screenplays a few years ago, I guess around 5 years ago now. Before that, I did like a lot of performance poetry. I also released an album this year. I do a lot of rap as well. So I'm going to do a song from that. It's called Disconnected, and it's about me creeping around in the rainforest of northern Georgia. So hope you enjoy it. I pull my invisibility cloak out, it's an awful fit. It's been years since I bought it. The old wizard who proffered it walked with an awkward switch. They said we'd talk again when I've been taught the gift, but I ain't saw him since. I'm probably just more intense. I'm probably just not their cup of tea. Most of y'all need a couple of weeks of reading just to get up to speed. I pull the cape over my shoulders, the cowl over my mouth, and I become the trees. My breath's a summer breeze. I creep slowly so no one to behold me, as if these folks would even know to notice me, homie. I'm so discreet. There's a certain glimmer that'll give away an amateur, but I'm a professional now. I do this shit for the camera, so ain't no way that I'm gonna jeopardize the mission, because I might not be the captain, but I'm the best in my position. I'm the one they call when they need to get inside the system, and the private key they usually use to identify is missing. In the shadow of genocide and division, there's no decision for me. They ain't bound to this other fish in the sea. I switch it up on them so quick they wonder if it could be. I swizzer right out the academy and into the streets. I'll put an end to the beef when a consensus is reached. On that memo I sent asking if the indentured could speak. Now this place, I ain't been here for weeks, so forgive me if I'm sensitive. You know how these white supremacists tend to release. I don't plan to chance it. Head swivel on panoramic. Ain't trying to get caught on candid camera as I amble the campus. Just need to hope I can focus and don't get distracted as I connect to the net, download the package, and extract it. The building's unlatched, the security's lax, and I have to laugh at it. They might get robbed by accident if they're gonna keep flashing it. I type my terminal passcode in fast because I practiced it at the command line, looking at asterisk like, damn, yo, I mastered this. But that's how they do it. They set a trap and put honey in front of your paws. Because when you're in isolation, every other mind has become a mirage. You start to wonder if maybe you could be given a visitor, but I guess it's easier to sell you propaganda when you're still a political prisoner and that be pausing while you playing and playing while you browsing. They want you paying for that while you staying in public housing, and they could fix the shit to the tune of 100,000, but every day they do not. So I had to just shut it down and disconnect. I disconnected. Disconnected. Am I disconnected? Okay, yeah, that song is called, surprisingly, Disconnected. It's from my album, Eternalist, which is available on my blog. So actually what I'm gonna do right now, I try to do this in all of my shows, is take a moment to say absolutely nothing except for go sign up for my mailing list. That's all that's happening right now. If you navigate away from the window, if you stop listening to me, you're not gonna miss anything, because all I'm saying is sign up for my mailing list, zine.glasseyeballs.com, zeen.glasseyeballs.com. That is my website, that's my blog, that's my mailing list. There's a lot of cool art there. It's all free. You can ignore what I'm saying right now and just go to zine.glasseyeballs.com. That's all that's happening is I'm pitching you my mailing list. You should give me your email address. I would appreciate it. Come support me. It's completely free. Okay, that's enough of that. Shameless self-promotion. I'm gonna do one more piece. When I started writing screenplays, people started asking me a lot to pitch them projects. Screenplays tend to be a lot longer than poems. And so very often people don't want to read your whole story unless you can hook them on it quickly. And so people started asking me to pitch stuff and pitch stories and pitch projects. And so this is a poem that I wrote kind of as a general purpose response to being asked to pitch. It's a short film, fade in on a little boy sitting in a tree. It's the only tree in the tenement backyard, and through the window, he can see his parents making dinner. They cut vegetables and they stir pots and they kiss. And just for a second, the boy relaxes. But the next day they tell him they're getting a divorce. They all move out of the apartment and they're never a family again. Cut to 30 years later. This little boy is now a man and he has a lot to talk about in therapy. He tells his story to his therapist and she wants him to move on with his life, accept how things turned out and make the best of it, but he can't. It's eating him. So that night he goes back to his old neighborhood. He finds his old building and he climbs the fence. The camera slowly pans the backyard and lands on a stump. The tree is cut down, gone forever. No, it's a television show. 3 Black matriarchs, widowed in the same year, liquidate their late husband's estates to put a down payment on a house. Between them, they have 7 children, 9 to 17. Every week, we watch this family hustle to make ends meet as they negotiate space, explore their sexuality, suffer through puberty, and all this in the context of a world that is actively trying to tear them apart and disenfranchise them, but they always come home to love. They can always count on each other for compassion and understanding and community. The story is about belonging. It's about the ways that we hold each other and lift each other. It's about growing up and growing old, about the ways that our chosen families choose us, about how empathy is a decision you have to make again every single day, but we do because it keeps us alive. Okay, forget that. It's a dystopian cinematic universe that looks suspiciously like modern day America, right down to the stormtroopers in uniform, right down to the poisoned water, right down to the greed, the mass incarceration, the hunger, the apartheid, the scheming suits milking cities for profit, right down to the supervillains. But the movies aren't about that. The movies are about resistance, about a world full of people who don't fit into boxes and not starship captains and fighter pilots, just folks, a bank teller with roommates, the usher at your cousin's funeral, somebody's teacher tired at the end of the day. We watch the trial of 4 poor Black folks falsely accused by a billionaire turned vigilante. We watch a defector from the police force rush to overturn the state's criminal conspiracy while being hunted by his coworkers. We watch 2 lovers radicalized by the approaching civil war choose each other over the stability of their old lives. And at the end of it all, a people resilient, a glaring humanity, reverence for our shared psychosis, a waking dream, a 0-player game, a new society more just to atone for the failures of the last. At the end of it all, they sit down and they eat. Everyone buried alive. Then they dig themselves out. Yeah, that's what it is. It's a world where that happens. It's a world where that's possible.
Oh, well, I'm just gonna take that in for a minute. Everyone's so freaking talented. Oh my God. Oh Lord. Grip, everyone. Thank you so freaking much. That was incredible. Oh my God. What a good night.